Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Death Holler. I'm the Reverend Dr. Death. Joining me, as always, is Llareyna, and we are discussing the further adventures of one Fred Krueger. This episode, we are covering Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child from 1989. Tagline, roll over Beethoven, it's Freddy's fifth.
Oh, I'm going to fucking throw up.
Oh, my God, that's bad.
That's horrible.
Now Freddy's a daddy, he's killing for two.
What?
I'm serious. That's one of the taglines. And then another one, evil has spawned.
Okay, evil has spawned is one thing, but the other two can fuck right the fuck off.
They're bad. They're real bad. Directed by Stephen Hopkins, written by Wes Craven as the character, John Skipp and Craig Spector, although they contributed the actual script that they had for this movie was not even used, and only one thing that they had from the script was used in this, but they had to be given credit because there were like a line of dialogue that got like kept over from their original screenplay. And then Leslie Boehm and did the story and the screenplay that actually ended up in the movie.
Okay.
Music by Jay Ferguson, made on a budget of $8 million, which is less than the last movie, but it only made $22.1 million.
Yeah.
And I think that low intake on money was kind of what prompted the next movie to be called Freddy's Dead, when they were considering just killing the character off, period, you know.
Like they've done in every movie so far ish.
Yeah,
quotation marks.
Just ending the franchise because they saw diminishing returns, basically. So
Air Bunnies, as what's her name calls it.
Principal players: Lisa Wilcox is back as Alice Johnson, who is once again our final girl.
Woo!
And she's a different final girl in the sense that she actually has a child and is impregnated, which is normally not within the rules of what you allow a final girl to be, but like it works. Robert Englund back as Freddy.
Never heard of him.
Kelly Jo Mentors playing Yvonne Miller, who's a friend to Alice and the doubting Thomas of the group. Refuses to believe in Freddy until she's fucking like forced to toward the end of the movie.
Yeah, well, you gonna learn.
If there's an opposite to a Doom Prophet, it would be her, basically. Yeah. Nicholas Mell plays Dennis Johnson, Alice's formerly abusive father. Whitby Hertford plays Jacob Daniel Johnson, who's the dream child in question. Valerie Armstrong plays Mrs. Jordan, Dan's mother. Bird Benning plays Mr. Jordan, Dan's father, and they're a bunch of rich assholes, basically. Yeah. Dan Hassel's back as Dan Jordan. He's the baby daddy.
Woo!
Erica Anderson plays Greta Gibson, who's a rich girl with a bitch mother, and hinted that she has eating disorders, but because her mom kind of makes her have an eating disorder.
Oh, she's a fatty.
And then we have Joe Seeley playing Mark Gray, the comic book geek. Synopsis: 1-2, Freddy's coming for you. 3-4, better lock your door. 5-6, grab your crucifix. 7-8, better stay awake. And 9-10, he's back again. Alice is pregnant, and it seems her unborn child Jacob has inherited her dream powers. This somehow allows the spirit of Freddy Krueger to once again manifest and begin harvesting the souls of Alice's friends and loved ones. Will Alice be able to stop Krueger before he takes over young Jacob's body and is reborn to kill again? Motorcycles probe their riders, eating disorders turn deadly, and reading too many comic books are bad for you. It's a boy.
Shut up.
That's literally the only line that came over from that script from Spector and Skipp, by the way. Was that particular line.
I want to go home.
Body count. A whopping 3 people die in this movie.
Barely a serial killer. He did the bare minimum.
To be honest, he's a fetus, so give him some slack. But seriously, yeah, that sucks. Dan Jordan is fused with a motorcycle and then crashes into a truck in reality and dies.
That was a long death.
Yeah, it took forever because he's in the truck. He's sleeping while driving, which is never a good thing.
Yeah.
But he gets he escapes the truck because Freddy's playing around with him, I guess. Rolls out of that, ends up in like a swimming pool area. Is able to call Alice or whatever somehow. I don't know if it's like in dream-wise, I guess is what they're hinting at, through a payphone. And then like as he's trying to make her way back to her after that, he finds a motorcycle because the truck has crashed or whatever at this point. And then whatever, and then he slowly becomes like a cyborg fused with a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Really cool effects.
Pretty
by
cool.
The way.
Looked painful as fuck. And they show, like, legit show the dead body after the scene is over, and you can just see him burning in the fire. And I'm like, this is, yeah.
Yeah, it's if you're going to have just 3 deaths, you better make them memorable. That's basically the gist of it.
Yeah.
Greta Gibson is cut open and fed to herself, choked to death. And a little note about both of these, that scene with Greta is so disappointing because like it's just there and it's gone in like a split second. But it and the motorcycle were both cut severely by the MPAA before they would allow them to get like a rating that they needed to like show this. And so that's the reason that they're so short, because there was that scene with Greta, like he was stabbing her guts and like ripping out chunks of her intestines and like plopping them into her mouth, like in that scene.
You are what you eat.
What's that?
You are what you eat.
Oh yeah, I thought you was quoting the line because it's the one line that I took. It's like his best quote because he's feeding her. He's like, "Bon appetit, bitch." You know, like that's again. You know, the motorcycle scene also had a lot more scenes showing like just the damage that was being done to Dan's body in that scene, with more of like the cables like underneath his skin and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and then Mark Gray is slashed as a paper boy, crushed to death. Like he turns into a little comic book character and he gets cut to pieces. So
I mean, I really got some Take On Me vibes from this.
Oh, I'm glad you said that because as soon I was waiting for the music to play. Take on me.
I was like, they totally literally ripped that from it.
I was just waiting for that to pop up, like it you know, because it was exactly that video is what it was.
I do like the way that when he bled the colors from his comic. So like it wasn't his blood, it was the color.
I like that. I like the way they portrayed his comic book hero, like in him in that form or whatever with the guns.
Yeah.
And like the way they did that, and the Take On Me animation was actually good. I give them credit. They actually put some effort into what limited deaths they had in this movie.
Yeah.
Quotes from Mark Gray as the Phantom Prowler: "Time to die, you Scarface limp dick," and then fires a bunch of times until Freddy changes, and then he becomes Super Freddy. "Faster than a bastard maniac, more powerful than a loco madman, it's Super Freddy." And then he changes back and turns Mark into a paper and slashes him, and then Freddy Krueger says, "Told you comic books was bad for you." That's the kind of quality we get in these movies toward the end, guys. That's what we get. Greta Gibson: "You're the one who's always slapping my hand about my weight, mother." And then Racine Gibson: "That's why we diet, dear, so we can eat at social events and not upset our other guests."
What the hell?
And then Greta back in response: "Tell you what, why don't I just eat the whole goddamn tray? Go throw up and come back for seconds, okay?" I'll give the actress who played Greta some kudos here. Like when she does at the beginning of the movie, when she's doing that like wasp, when I say wasp, like white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, like that, uppity like white person voice, like she did a very good job with it when she's like making fun of her mother.
Yeah,
it's like because she's even holding her teeth. It's like, well, we have to eat at the Hamptons, like that sort of like way that they talk. I'm like, yeah, she's pretty good at that impression. This scene between Freddy, who's stuffing the food in Greta's mouth, second helping, and then Racine's like, "Don't talk with your mouth full, dear," and then Freddy's like, "You are what you eat," that line that you mentioned.
Yeah. It was so gross looking. It was cheap but gross looking.
It reminded me of the scene from the Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, where you have the character in the restaurant and he's like grossly obese, and like and then the waiter comes up to him and he's like, "Would you like anything else, sir?" And he's like, "Oh, I could not have another bite." And then he's like, "What about a wafer thin mint?" And then the guy agrees to it and then explodes or whatever. It's a good scene, but it was it looked like they had took that scene and ran with it. It's what it looked like.
They probably did.
And then Greta Gibson, the bottom line, Alice, if anybody's trying to hurt you, supernatural or not, you're going to have to go through us first. And then Yvonne's like, all of us, right? And then Alice responds, that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, because they will.
Yeah, he will go through all of you. Visually, this movie's got some very good visuals in it.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about those deaths that we just mentioned. I was surprised. I remember hating this movie as a kid, and it's still not great, don't get me wrong, but I love the gothic look that the director tried to bring to this movie, like the old like cathedral castle like look that he had for like the Amanda Kruger's like the tower that she was locked into.
Yeah.
The labyrinth ripoff that they did at the end of the movie, where they had like the MC Escher like steps going like in different directions, and they were chasing after Jacob and Freddy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a direct ripoff, folks, from like Labyrinth. I mean, it's almost like the same exact scene as David Bowie, with a baby, and Jennifer Connelly like running after him.
Well, in the world of flat out ripping things from other people, we call it inspo. It's inspired by.
It's a riff on that. It's a remix of it.
Yeah,
is what they say. But no, I mean, like, I got to give them credit. I even like how this movie was lit. Like we talked about the last movie seeming cheap. This movie actually had good lighting in it in a lot of scenes. It had that, like that gothic, like, the scenes whenever they're supposed to be dark were darker. It was well lit. I don't know. I was just impressed visually by the movie, even if I didn't like how, the story seemed like just pasted together, and like, the lack of deaths in the movie and all that.
Well, this one didn't look as cheap. Now, there was some definitely like, okay, so like, I want to make this reference because Freddy Krueger or Nightmare on Elm Street in general has this thing where you can tell you're ripping through a rubber body part, etc. That's just what they do. So I don't really count that in my this movie looked cheap. So like when in part 4 where her arms were bent and she turned into a cockroach, the skin ripping and becoming insect arms, totally, that's just how they do. In this movie, it was her face and everything when she was being overfed, Greta. And you could tell it was that cheap rubbery look that she was going to break apart eventually because it's easier to do, but they make it look good. It might be a little cheesy, but it's definitely effective.
And we're not even throwing in the fact that they had they went back to the Ray Harryhausen type of stop motion effects in this movie. Because there's a scene where Alice looks in the fridge and like all the food in there rots, but it's clearly like it's almost like the Pee-wee's Playhouse like look that he had whenever he like opened up the fridge.
I almost forgot about that.
And then the scene where Yvonne is like in the pool area and like all the, tendrils come up out of the pool or whatever, and they're like Freddy's fingers or whatever they're supposed to be. That is like a stop motion effect, like, and she plays on like a green screen type situation. So, it's like we've said before, it's janky looking. It's kind of cheap, but at the same time, there's something nostalgic and like fun about it. Like it doesn't detract from the movie that way.
And this movie didn't look cheap.
It didn't. That's the thing that surprised me when I watched it, because I was like, I remember hating this movie as a kid, but it's actually a better movie in some ways than part 4 was.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Alice better in this one. Like, I feel like they got better like use out of Lisa Wilcox in this. Like, her acting is way better in this. I mean, maybe it's, and she does admit that she was a little bit like skittish in the first movie, and this one she kind of like had more confidence in herself, so that definitely plays a part. But I mean, regardless of that, she's a better actor. Like Dan's, he's barely in the other movie, he's just like eye candy for the women or whatever. In this one, he's got a little bit more substance to him. It's just the scope of the movie's the worst problem, because it's like, first of all, the whole thing about Freddy like coming back through like Alice's like fetus, where did that come from? Like, that just, I mean, I know where it came from idea wise, because I think it's in the trivia, like one of the producers who had been pitching this since like the third movie, like finally got her way whenever they didn't have another idea for a script. And because when she was pregnant, I think during the making of the third movie, and they kept saying, it's like, what if Freddy, like had, she had this image in her mind of like these claws like pressing, and then maybe even one of the people like went along with it too, pressing like Freddy's claws, like ripping out of a woman's like pregnant belly or something from the inside. And so she just kept pitching it, and eventually they're like, yeah, we don't have any other ideas, let's do this. But like that seems kind of just like thrown in there. And then like the way that they kill him at the end of this one, it's a little bit better, and it's a little bit more explained than it was in part 4, because in this one it's like Jacob's like using his own power that Freddy has given him to like, you know, like basically expel Freddy from, you know, the coming back. But like it's still like very threadbare as far as like an explanation for anything. But the story, but I mean, like I said, I was really surprised by the visuals, and the sound's not bad in it either. It's more of like an orchestral gothic theme that kind of fits like the look of the movie, but it's not bad. It's just, I kind of miss like the 80s that we got in the last movie a little bit. But as far as like, I can't really hold it against it. I mean, it's really just that's the story just kind of didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything. Yeah. And they only had 12 weeks to film this.
Oh,
like,
wow.
That's the thing that kills me.
Damn.
Because the director was talking about it. They were having, at any given time, they had 3 different sets going on, and that was the complaint by Lisa and some of the actresses, because the director was so like in a rush, and not his own fault. He wanted more time, but he just didn't have it because they wanted such a quick turnaround, that he would be on one scene with them and they would start the filming, and then he would like hear, and then somebody would say, oh, we're ready for you to pick up this one scene, and another, you know, because how we talked about with movies, they're always picking up whatever scenes they can for the interstitials, you know, whenever they can. It's usually not filmed in order. And so they would tell him, and it's like he didn't have enough time he would just tell him, he's like, continue with your scene, they'll keep filming, and he would have to rush to the other set just to pick up that part of it. So he was in like 3 places at any given time, like constantly.
That's insane.
He even said on that Never Sleep Again, he said, I don't know how I did that. He said, I was younger. He said, but he said, if anybody came to me now, he said, I would tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, he said, there's no way I would try to even attempt to do what I did during this movie.
Oh, so, yeah. I don't fucking blame him.
But I mean, I feel like he had legit talent, because I like what he did in the movie with what little he had. It's just that he didn't have enough time to flesh anything out. It was just bam, bam, bam. We got to get this done.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on? I've kind of just went on my part of it, but.
I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I just can't believe that the timeline, a 12-week long film, the budget being less, and I guess there's a lot of work involved by, what's his name? Frederick himself. It goes to show you how little is needed to make a film a good one.
Yeah, I mean, budget-wise, they didn't need that much. I mean, yes, they only had 3 kills, so they could take that budget and really pour them into those 3 kills. But, I mean, 3 good kills versus, like, one where you literally have a pair of gloves floating at somebody's, you know, chest or whatever. And, I mean, I'll take that any day. I know I think that they should have, if they couldn't film Rick dying, you know, in a decent like way in the last film, they should have just cut his death from the movie or something.
Figured it out. It didn't make sense, even if they were trying to keep a line or whatever, or they had filmed his. They said they filmed his funeral.
Yeah, they filmed that funeral scene with him, but they could have cut that out and said, okay, we're going to go a different direction because this is just too cheap. Like, I mean, we're not doing this. You know? And just like the way that the lighting was done, the way the lines were delivered, it felt like more quality than the last movie. I hate to say it, because I know a lot of fans out there still hold this up as like the next best sequel versus 3. But going back and watching it, I don't know, my taste has changed. I like what the guy tried to do in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. The hard part is that you can have a pretty good storyline, but it better be amazing if you have to cover up for the fact that visually it looks cheap. I think, unfortunately, I feel like you can get away with a better looking film that doesn't have as strong as a storyline. And I'm not saying that that's what happened here, but I am saying visually, right off the bat, when a movie looks good, I'm in. You know, that's just how I am.
It's a visual medium. It makes sense. I mean, if you can have the whole package, then yes, you have a Citizen Kane, you have a, Quentin Tarantino Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs, you have that type of thing going on. If it looks and has the story to back it up, that's like, you know, meeting a 10 in real life. You know, she's got the personality and she's got the body to go along with it. But I mean, let's face it, a lot of us are shallow, and if it looks good, at least we've got that to go off of, even if it's got a bad personality. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a visual medium first and foremost, and if you look cheap, it's harder. If you, because I mean, there's some independent films out there. The stories are not bad in them, but the movie is so cheap, it's just hard to get over. So, I mean, it's, you know, you really got to work to like those movies. And that's why I feel like just upon like watching these, you know, for this review, I tended to warm up on this one over what I thought, because I was really dreading it when I watched it. I'm like, I actually like this better than the last one I just watched in different ways. But I mean, I did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it was just a weird sensation because, like I said, I remember as a kid, I did not like 5. The only thing I remembered about it was there's the creepy looking kid in the movie,
Yeah.
and the fact that she was pregnant, and something about fountain or whatever at some point, because I think in the movie she sees like Freddy's face in a fountain when she throws a coin or something, and like, you know, and that's all I remembered about the movie, and the stairs. Like I remembered something about a weird set of stairs. Like, but I mean, it was my least visited movie. Once I watched it, I was one and done with it as a kid. And going back, I'm just like, I really appreciate what the guy was trying to do, even if he didn't have the time to do it.
Yeah, this is my first time watching this, so yeah, I don't have anything. I don't have the memory of my childhood to compare it to.
And I remember a lot more about liking part 4, but when I went back and watched it, the same things that I liked as a kid are the only things that hold up now, which are, you know, the cockroach scene and some of the deaths that way, you know, like it's, you know, it just feels like you've got somebody who's less of an artist at their craft. And I hate to say it about Rennie Harlan. I don't know much else what he's done to really compare other than Prison. And I like Prison for what it is, but it's another one of those schlocky, you know, like, you know, type movies. And I just feel like the director of this one, Hopkins, like he's better at his craft, or at least I appreciate what he does better.
Yeah. What was I going to say about this? And it is kind of moving on a little bit, but not really. The story. What are we thinking about the story? I'm kind of in the middle. I'm on the fence on it.
Well, like I said, I mean, it's on the one hand, there's not a whole lot there.
Yeah.
But then again, it's got more substance to it than the last one. Literally, they're going back by dog pissing. I mean,
yes.
In this one, they at least try to set up that, you know, Amanda Kruger's spirit's still out there. So they brought that back.
Yeah.
You know, you get a little, and it expands upon her and being raped, and, you know, and they even had the scene where they show one of the inmates looks like Robert Englund. So I mean, because it's just him. So I mean, Freddy directly gets his, you know, looks at least from that one maniac. So they kind of set that up. But they have in that to where like the souls that he's harvesting through the use of the child's dreams, he's feeding in the child so that he can like actually be reborn in real life, and that, you know, to get to. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it makes more like, you know, sense than just, you know, a dog pissing. I mean,
I will give it that.
Anything.
I needed you to kind of give me a little bit more clarity on that, because I mean, not the dog pissing. Like we get that was dumb. And that was a joke that was taken just a little too far. But in terms of this one,
basically, if he fed Jacob enough souls, then Jacob would become possessed, basically, and Freddy could move in there and be physically born again. Is what he was trying to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then at the end of it, when Jacob takes those souls using his own dream power that he's got directly from his mother, and uses them to attack Freddy, and then like the souls come back out, kind of like a redux of what happened in part 4.
Yeah.
But still cool, because they did a different thing with it. They had like the 3 people in the movie that were killed, like come out of the back of his head, and they dragged him, you know, away or whatever. That made sense too, to a degree. And they even had that scene where like Jacob looks at Alice and tells her, he's like, Freddy exists because he's still inside of you. And remember, in the last man, they're actually contributing the lore in that sense, because in the last movie, if you remember, the only reason that Freddy was able to use Alice was because whenever Kristen sent her soul or her powers or whatever you want to call it out into Kristen, they passed through Freddy, so Freddy tainted them. Like he put it like, it's almost like a Horcrux from like the, you know, Harry Potter movies. It's like part of his being inhabited, Alice. So that's the reason he was able to use her to branch out and start killing other people. So in this one, like, he's still part of her, and like and her son tells her that, and so and you got that scene where she separates from Freddy, where the two of them are merged, in that, it janky but still done in a fun way, and she actually brings him out of herself, so she expels that part of Freddy out of her. So it makes more sense than the last movie did.
Yeah.
Still, like I said, the story's weak. I mean, but it does feel better put together in that way.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about it before we get into trivia for this one?
We didn't really, I guess we did kind of talk about acting. Music, there wasn't anything to bring up music-wise. Other than it was part of the times. There's not a whole lot of actors in the movie.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of actors in the movie because it's a very small cast, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, Dan is better, even though he's not really in it that long. At least versus the last movie, he's not a stellar actor by any means.
Yeah.
But the guy even admitted it. He says on Never Sleep Again that, like, he didn't even expect to be cast in the last movie. Like, in part 4, he was like an extra that showed up, and they were like, "We like your look, we're going to cast you."
Yeah.
He said he's just thrilled that he even had a job.
I would be too. I mean, like, my man's is speaking the language.
Yvonne did her part. Like, I mean, she serviced the role that she was supposed to play in it. Mark was okay in his role as the Prowler, and then of the comic book geek or whatever. I mean, there's really Jacob's kind of weird. He gives me like Children of the Corn vibes.
Yes.
But I don't know if that was deliberate or not.
If anyone were to complain about someone who is not very reactive, that kid.
Yeah. He loves it though. I mean, the actor who played that character, because like they had him on Never Sleep Again, and like it's still one of his favorite things that he ever did.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
he
bet.
said that Robert Englund was and this is sad, and I don't know if this is in the trivia, but he had just lost his father before this movie. And that's bad at any age, but like he was a kid, like a small kid.
Yeah.
And his dad had died, and he said this movie actually helped him heal, because like when he got on set, Robert Englund, like we've discussed a million times, was such a sweetheart and like took him under his wing. And like, it's so funny, Freddy being like the horrible child killer that he is, like Robert Englund's the complete opposite. Like he, the kid said, he's like, he helped me, get over or helped me transition through that period of my grief or whatever. And he said, I'll be forever thankful for Robert Englund for being, doing what he did for me. And that's just, I mean, that says a lot about Robert Englund as a person, that he did that,
Yeah. Well, and you have to think about it too, is that people complain that child actors are the hardest to work with because they're little people with big emotions at the end of the day. And you have to imagine that no matter how prestigious of a child actor you are, I mean, like, how mature do you have to be in your brain to be able to handle a set like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street? Actually, Nightmare on Elm Street is what we're talking about, though. And so you see a character like Freddy, and he's fucking scary. I don't care, again, how much of a good actor you are. And Robert Englund wants to make sure, hey, this kid knows that despite what we're doing, I am a person and a nice person. I won't actually hurt him. So,
well, it goes back to what you were talking about with, when we did the Evil Dead Rise, spoiler cast or whatever. I worried about just watching that movie about that little girl who plays like the youngest daughter in the movie, because like the stuff that she was, in theory being exposed to. I mean, I know there's ways from to cut around and film her scenes outside of it, and they probably did. But I mean, good God. I mean, like, I can't imagine a kid her age, like, seeing shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, it not affecting her somewhat,
Yeah. So, and what's crazy is that the woman who played the mom, the possessed mom, she was like, basically in a nutshell, she was like, fuck them kids. Not so much the kids in the film, but like, she goes, I had to go to a really dark place to be a mom that's abandoning her kids, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be able to tap into that. I mean, and I mean, we talked about before. There's been a few other actors who, tapped in such a dark place, like filming the movies that they did. That like, I wished I could remember which one it was. I just saw something the other day where there was an actor who was in a horror film, and he talked about a character he played, and and he said it never left him. He said he got into such a dark place filming the role that even to this day it bothers him, and you think, oh well, buck up, you pussy, that's the pretending. But like, if you're doing your job as an actor, or an actress, you've got to tap into that mindset to make it believable. And if you're playing a very dark character, I mean, that can fuck you up. I mean, because everybody has their own, like, the Nietzsche's, like, came up with this, like, the shadow self, I think is what they call it, and everybody's got one, and we always deny that it's there. If we do, we compartmentalize it. But these people have to tap into that, and they have to face that shadow self. And when you do that, I mean, you're literally staring at the worst version of yourself, and that's hard to do.
Yeah,
it's hard to do and not have some effect from it.
Yeah, that's insane.
So I mean,
yeah, good on him for realizing.
I know that God.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead.
Oh, I said good on, Robert Englund for realizing, hey, let's make this kid's life a little less of a hell while he's on its set,
Well, yeah, and especially, I mean, realizing the kid had just lost his dad. I mean, the kid might not have delivered like as much as the acting, as he probably could have. But I mean, I don't know how as a kid you do a job like that, and with your father just having passed away, and not like just be, I mean, because he couldn't, it wasn't supposed to be like, like happening because he was partially, and so like I know that immediately his like surface emotions would have been that he wanted to bring like the sadness and the anger and everything that comes along with losing a parent, to the forefront, but that's not what the character needed. And so the fact that he didn't bring that into his I mean, that shows that he was at least acting in that sense.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, it's hard to think about. I mean, if you're not in that position and not knowing it, and you just watch the movie, it's like that kid's flat.
But then you don't know the real trauma behind it.
Yeah. So anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in there because he mentioned it, and I was like, damn, that fucking sucks. Like, I mean, I was a lot older when I lost my dad, and it still hurts. So I can't imagine as a kid that young and then turn around and have to, deal with that like while you're working. But he said, but he did say that it actually helped him. The job actually, helped him move through it. So at least there was that.
Yeah. God, I just can't imagine a super friendly Freddy Krueger. Okay, son, here's what we're going to do. You're going to be okay? You got this? Okay, you got this.
Well, I was watching back through it. I mean, I watched from the beginning, and of course they covered the first two movies that we've already or first three we've already discussed. But it brought up again, which I mentioned in the trivia on part 3. But like Freddy was like Robert Englund was like the on-set dad for all the kids in the Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
He said all the boys would come to him and they were like, hey, how do we get with, Joey in particular, like the actor who played Joey was like very, very much struck by Patricia Arquette. Like he could not, he even said, Joey was me. He said, I was a horn dog. And like, he said she was my obsession. And then like he had to have been the one, but like Robert Englund mentioned that he's like, they were coming up to me on set asking me how, the best, tips I could give them to get with Patricia, and he's like, telling them, he's like, guys, that's not me. I'm not going to tell you how to work your mojo. You need to figure that on your own, But they looked at him as kind of like their on-set dad, like giving them advice on how to date. So,
hey, Freddie, question real quick.
It's just funny. I mean, like, you see him in interviews, and like he's the sweetest guy, like in interviews, and you can tell he's genuine with it. Whenever he's like, he might charge an arm and a leg to get in the Freddy stuff. If you go to a convention, he is one of the highest ones, and it sucks. But I understand it because he hates having to dress up in that. So
yeah, I don't blame him. And the funny thing about it is, you got to think of the early films is when they were doing the hours and hours of makeup. So anything he had to do that wasn't Freddy related, he was still dressed as Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, there is a funny scene on that Never Sleep Again where they had he's one of the KLB or whatever guys or whatever. It was like the special effects guys who one of them went on to do The Walking Dead. I know I'm blanking on his name, but anyways, like there's three of them, and they started out with Romero working underneath Tom Savini, and and they went on and they formed their own company, and like they worked with Sam Raimi at times and got we mentioned they were part of the cast that did that. The Sam Raimi film, I think it might have been Rob Tappert's friend or whatever that did the one in the grocery store serial killer. But anyways, like he was on this set, like he was hired in starting on part 4 and then really, worked on part 5. I think it's like Berg, like Robert Berg or something like that's his name.
Yeah.
But he was talking about it, and he said that the former guy who did roundabout way, going back to the story, he was working with a guy who'd done the Freddy makeup since part 2. And that guy had really, he was the one that developed the look that everybody knows of Freddy, like the iconic when it was latex, makeup and all that, and it wasn't a mask. And he was working with him, and the guy told him, he's like, good luck with Robert. He's like, he will talk your friggin' ear off. He's like, he said, and he gave him some tips. He's like, when he gets really chatty, here's a way to shut him up. And like, and they showed it, and they showed like a behind the scenes video of Robert Englund, and it was hilarious because it was like watching some catty woman or whatever at a salon, because he was sitting there and they were applying the makeup, and he's just got his legs crossed, and he's like very animated with his hands, and he's like, and he's telling some story about how he was on Broadway and some woman like slight or got mad at him or something, and they said he did it all the time, and they said you would get. The one guy who was the makeup director before Bergman or whatever his name is said that he got so used to hearing the same stories from Robert Englund that he would finish them for him and say, and tell him the next part, Robert, because he knew where he was going with the story. He got that used to hearing him. But I just, and the guy from KLB or whatever, the makeup, was talking about how he got to the point where he got so he wasn't say annoyed, but he said he just got so tired of hearing the same stuff from Robert while they were the lengthy process of applying the prosthetics that he would deliberately like apply the makeup in a way that would like force Robert to shut his mouth so that he would have to hear it for a few minutes.
Oh my God.
But I mean, it's good that you have somebody that outgoing playing Freddy, because I mean, that's who he is. I mean,
it would be intimidating if it was the other way. Like the Jason, the guy, well, any Jason character, as far as I could tell, they all stayed in character and they just kind of avoided people.
Well, and Kane Hodder, if you've ever met him, I mean, he's not terrible in that sense, but he's he's a very powerful looking guy in real life, even if he is shorter than I am.
Yeah.
Like, he's very stocky and well built, and he's got a look to him, and he's got a demeanor that's like, he's the male version of resting bitch face, basically. And it's like, sorry.
I heard he almost broke your hand off too.
Well, what he did was like he likes to choke people whenever he's like, he holds a machete in one hand and he's choking with the other, because that's the classic, especially undead Jason maneuver. Like he'll pick you up off the ground and then give you the machete. But then he grabbed me by the throat, was taking the picture, and when he squeezes, he goes for the. I mean, it's not just like he puts his hand right in your throat. My face was turning red, and like when he let go, I was able to breathe.
Oh my God! Okay, that picture has to look amazing.
I've got it somewhere. It's pretty bad. I was like, damn, like you really got in this fucking shit, dude. Like,
oh my God. I wonder if he's like that with the kids though.
I heard he's different with females. In a bad way. Like he's very well, maybe he would be more touchy-feely if he thought he'd get away with it type, if you understand what I'm saying. So,
woohoo! No, I'm kidding.
But like very flirty, and some people have gotten. Yeah, I've heard some women say they get uncomfortable around him because of the way he is. It just kind of depends. And I've never heard that about Robert, though. Robert's always been like super nice to everybody.
Oh my God! So with Kane Hodder, what you're telling me is there's a chance.
You like being choked out while you're going at it? Anyways, you want to move into trivia for this one?
Let's go into trivia.
So Stephen King and comic book writer Frank Miller were actually offered the role of writing and directing this movie. Both turned it down for different reasons. According to director Stephen Hopkins, They got lots of tarantulas, hand painted them green and red, and on the floor of the stage placed a little wall up in the shape of an arm and had trainers come in and around the tarantulas. The plan was to simply drop the wall in the film, the resulting scattering of the spiders. However, after they got the shot, they were left with a studio full of 200 angry tarantulas and Hopkins figures. We probably carried on shooting for another on another set. I'm sure. I don't think anyone ever found them again. As far as the director knows, those spiders roamed freely through the studio and escaped into the free world.
Oh my
God. So yeah, they had a bunch of tarantulas on set, and they just let them go and never bothered to, because like I said, they were bouncing from set to set. They just like, somebody will clean it up, and that's how it was.
No, shut up. Okay, hold on. They got lots of tarantulas, and then they hand painted them. On the floor of the stage, placed a little wall up in the shape of an arm and had tarantulas come in and around, and had trainers come in and around the tarantulas. Okay, so these tarantulas weren't trained. They were just there.
Yeah, they were just there, and they just they might be in the studio. Somebody, I mean, the hope was that somebody went around collecting them. But hey, I mean, if you want to be the person collecting a bunch of pissed off tarantulas, 200 to be exact, good on you. That would not be my job, and I would never.
No.
I would burn down that studio if it was me, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay, but wait a second. How did they know they were angry? This is scary. The plot thickens.
They were probably giving them like the signs. I mean, like even tarantulas, I mean, they don't have poisonous bite like a black widow, but they still bite, and like they rear back and like kind of raise their front two legs to let you know they're getting ready to strike. So they were probably doing that maneuver.
I gotta go. This is okay.
Let's see. Well, actually, according to this, now they said 12 weeks on Never Sleep Again, but this trivia says that he was given 4 weeks to shoot and then another 4 weeks to edit. So, which 12 weeks total, that kind of makes sense. They might have had another 4 weeks for post production. That makes it even worse because that means he literally made this movie in 4 weeks.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Like they were shooting almost constantly by bouncing from one stage to the other. Executive producer Sarah Reisher's original pitch to New Line, she was the one that kept going back to him, for Dream Warriors was for Freddie to have a baby. Reisher stats, I went in, one of the executives was pregnant at the time, and I said, picture Freddie clawing his way out of the womb. No one liked my ideas, so then I got a call for Nightmare 5, and when they came to me, they said, remember that you wanted Freddie to have a baby? Well, we like that idea now. What if Alice was the mom? So folks, your dreams can come true, even if you're kind of a shitty producer that just kind of like, or executive that kind of comes up with, whatever idea floats in your mind. The laughter heard at the end, right before the credits roll, is a clip of Vincent Price laughing at the end of Michael Jackson's song Thriller. Price's laughter is sampled at the beginning of Kool Moe Dee's song Let's Go, which is played during the film's end credits.
I wonder if that's the laugh that I have of Freddie in our disclaimer.
Well, I don't know, because he does laugh at one scene.
Yeah.
So I mean, the final A Nightmare on Elm Street film until Freddy versus Jason, the feature of the jump rope kid singing Freddy's rhyme.
Yeah.
When Alice and Mark look through the piles of newspapers for a moment, when the camera is on the article regarding Amanda Kruger's death, in this article, producer Robert Shea is quoted as saying, she was a victim of the evil within us all. I hope she will know peace in the life hereafter.
Wow.
At around 6 minutes during the sequence in which the nun, Amanda, is raped by the criminally insane, Robert Englund is wandering around the background without his Freddy makeup, including one shot in which the camera lingers on him for a few seconds.
Well, of course.
And he talks about that scene. They got at least 100 or more extras to come in. They gave them no direction, and he said that it was actually scary, especially, and he said he actually even had to protect the actress who played Alice, Lisa Wilcox, because he said all the direction they were give was that he said they were bumbling around, just in, acting crazy, and then it really got into their parts. And then whenever they had to crowd around her, like he was actually scared for her, and he moved in there at the last second and was like a body shield for her.
Yeah.
That would have been scary as fuck as her, because she mentioned it too, and she's like, I was legit frightened in that scene. Like she said, because they, even after they called like cut, it took them forever to stop.
Damn.
So I'm not good with
that.
If I was Yeah, if I was a woman, I wouldn't be in that situation. I'm just saying. So
Yeah, you better give me some fucking
film,
trained professionals. How about that?
and I mean, when you get an extra, I mean, yeah, I think extras. Well, I don't even know if extras have to have their SAG cards, but I mean, you know, you can get any rando in the street from anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say that they're not fucked up? You know. The film opened at number 3 in the box office, but it disappeared thereafter, and it was the lowest grossing film of the franchise. Robert Englund stated the film was a success, however. And I don't know if he's just basing that on the fact that he liked it, you know, but
yeah.
I mean, it did make money. So, I mean, it wasn't a bomb. It's just it didn't really go anywhere from, you know, the previous ones. The final, Nightmare on Elm Street film to feature children living in Springwood, as we'll get into in part 6. All the kids are dead, and you know, in the next movie. Lisa Wilcox's name appears on the opening credits, but not in the ending credits, and it doesn't give a reason why, but that's kind of weird. If you were a Nightmare on Elm Street fan looking at the poster in 88 and 89, you were probably curious what the heck Dream Child meant and what was going on with the fetus and the crystal ball in Freddy's glove. Well, the people making the film thought the same thing, too, because the poster came out before they actually had a clear idea what the movie was beyond its premise and title.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they were having to turn these around. This was being turned around so quick that the poster was made before the script was.
Fucking shit.
Writers John Skip and Craig Spector had to fight to get the credit for their work on the script, but other than It's a Boy was the only thing that was actually kept. So, I mean, you know, but I guess if you're a screenwriter and they keep any of it, I mean, it's still yours. I mean, technically.
Yeah.
Director Rennie Harlan, who directed Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, wasn't able to return to direct this film due to directing Die Hard 2. So that's a movie I've seen with him that actually turned out okay, was Die Hard 2.
Yeah, it was probably a better choice that he did that, to be honest.
Yeah. And that's a pretty big movie. It's not a bad sequel. And so I got to give him credit. I mean, like that one has some skill to it. So it at least stands up versus Part 4 as far as that goes. Freddy was played by the screenwriter for the teaser trailer, David J. Shaw, one of the Dream Child script rewrite wizards. Actually got to be in the film. That's Shaw's hand in the Freddy glove at the end. The baby carriage was a big prop into which he would fit, but the lights had to be placed inside the carriage, almost causing his arm to catch on fire.
Ow.
It's like, okay, you're a screenwriter, you get to be Freddy, but hop in this oversized carriage we got and just don't burn yourself. Let's see. This one's actually from the other one.
That's what I thought. I was like, wait a second. Is that it again?
Yeah. They just replaced that. Baby Jacob was portrayed by a baby girl in the movie, which is kind of weird.
It happens all the time, though.
It was... Yeah, I mean, they used to do that with kids, too. They would have, like, boys playing girls and girls playing boys and, like, different scenes for stuff, too. So it was introduced that Yvonne not only works as a nurse in Springwood Hospital, but also works as a waitress in Crave Inn along with Alice Johnson. I guess that's okay for a nurse to be, like, but I don't know. That seems kind of weird, like, a nurse just being a waitress. Like, I mean, I figured if anything, they'd be, like, double duty as, like, something else. Like, but
yeah. I thought she was just a volunteer nurse.
Maybe that's what, and that would make more sense if she was.
Yeah.
Of course, the scene with Freddy, Alice, Jacob, and then Dan is reminiscent of the scene in Labyrinth, like we've said. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty close. At around 49 minutes on the door to Dr. Moore's office, just below his name, the name Dr. Talele can be seen. This is a reference to Jennifer Talele, I guess is how you say it, who has been involved with the franchise since the beginning in various capacities, and most notably, she was the one that directed the Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, that we're reviewing next.
Yeah.
Alice is the first character in the series to have a child. When Mark is lying on the floor looking through the comic books, he picks up the one titled Nightmare from Hell. In the upper left corner, there is a KC in the capital letters above the 50-cent price indicator. This could stand for Krueger Comics.
Oh, my God.
In this film, Freddy Krueger says bitch twice.
Woo!
This film was released in theaters the same month as the previous film, except 8 days later on August 11th, 89. So they had like a year turnaround between these movies, which is insane.
That's fucking wild.
what we talked about was Scream, but they already had he already had part of a script written for part 2 whenever we introduced it. This one was wholesale made up after the first one. Like, that's how quick they turned this thing around.
Yeah.
All death sequences were cut down significantly in order to avoid an X rating. Dan's original motorcycle death was longer and contained much more gore. Many sequences showing Dan's face racked in pain were cut out. Yeah, he screams and stuff a lot, making it way more painful in the other version. Many sequences showing, along with his screams and Freddy's laughter, scenes which were on the screen for only a few seconds or several minutes long on film. The entire sequence is much longer, and the timing of Freddy's quips are different. Greta's dinner scene was also edited. Originally, Freddy filleted the Greta doll with a claw glove, causing it to spurt blood everywhere. And then he force-fed her own innards. Shots of the guests laughing were also cut. And after Freddy said, "You are what you eat," she looked down and realized that he had gutted her and was feeding her mush from her own stomach. This explains why the Greta doll in Mark's dream is bleeding from its torso. And then finally, Mark's demise is also cut as Freddy shreds the paper in the unrated release. His face is animated and shows him screaming along to his cries of pain until Freddy cuts his paper head off. All 3 scenes can be viewed unedited in the original unrated VHS release. I think those would have made the deaths better if they would have been in there. They would have made it more, I don't know, like gave more depth or punch to like him, what he did in it.
I have to agree.
In the document, go ahead.
Oh no, I just said I have to agree with that. And not only that, but like at the beginning, his death was already long. So like, how much longer was it that they cut it down?
I want to say that they said it was like 2 or 3 minutes more that they showed of him just being like in pure agony, like on screen or whatever. Like they really focused on how much it was hurting him, you know, because he was getting like attacked.
I mean, I like that, but whatever.
In the documentary Never Sleep Again, director Stephen Hopkins admitted he thought Mark's death scene was silly, but being a comic book nerd, he just had to put it in there. And they showed some of the storyboards that he made for this. Like that guy's the Stephen Hopkins is a legit like artist of his own right, because like, I mean, it looks like a comic book like the storyboards do.
Yeah.
They were pretty cool looking actually. The graduation sequence was cut down significantly to speed up the pacing of the film. As a result, there were several continuity errors. Along the cut footage was Dan's graduation speech, dialogue between Greta and Racine, a rap between Yvonne, Alice, and Greta, additional dialogue about parents and the future plans, and a scene in which Alice's father gives her a camera she has been saving up for his graduation present before she went to Paris. If you watch closely, you can see Alice hand her father a camera before they go to take the group picture. So, they cut a lot of like the little like interstitial stuff to kind of get like the group together and show that their relationships, I guess, but it makes sense. I mean, you focus on that stuff too much and it's kind of like, what's the point? So,
I wouldn't have wanted to see the rap between Yvonne and Alice. No, thank you. I'm good.
No, that is pretty good that they cut that. At around 1 hour and 20 minutes, School's Out Kruger was a replacement line when Whit Hertford Jacob, who was a minor at the time, wasn't permitted to say, "Fuck you, Kruger."
Oh, my God.
In the love scene at the opening of the film, the male actor is Michael Bailey Smith. He is the same actor that plays Super Freddy in Mark's Dream.
Oh, my God.
He mentioned that too, like that actor, and he said, so I'm sitting here and I'm filming the scene for Super Freddy, and he said they come to him the next day and they said, we got this love scene that we're going to start the movie at. So are you fine with like having this super, like hot sex scene? And he's like, yeah.
Duh.
He's like, he said it was the greatest, like he said it was the greatest day of his life. He's like, they're paying him to do like something that he would just love to do anyway.
Oh my God.
When Alice wakes up from her nightmare in the asylum and one of the deranged Weston Hills patients, who's portrayed by Robert Englund, appears beside her in bed and pins her down, originally he said there's no such thing as safe sex. The line was cut from the film. I can kind of see why. I mean, you don't want to imply the rape more than it already is there. So, I mean, whatever. Mark is the only character in the film who uses Dream Warrior powers, though failed to confront Freddy. He's, whenever he becomes the Prowler, basically.
Yeah.
All of Mark's drawings are supposed to come alive during his death scene, but were too long and were cut down. There was a nude body double that stood in for Lisa Wilcox during the scene where Alice's dream morphs into a nightmare. And Mark, along with Dan and Debbie Stevens from A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the Dream Master, are the only characters not to be human while being killed by Freddy. Mark was turned into paper, and then Dan was a skeleton-looking cyborg fused with a motorcycle, and then Debbie was a cockroach.
Okay.
And then Amanda was the only character whose spirit appeared to roam both the real and the dream world. So there's that to finish that out. So what do we think about Alice this time, since you kind of reserved your thoughts from the last one?
I think she did a little bit better. Like I like her more as a final girl in this film.
Yeah, she's still not the best in the series, in my opinion, but she's way better than she was in the fourth film, for sure. Freddie, he's getting a little goofy in this one, but I mean, I don't know. There's not enough of him in this one, versus the last one, him acting goofy. So I feel like 4 was actually goofier in ways than he was in this one.
Yeah.
What's your best kill? I mean, there's only 3 to choose from, so it's not like it's a big choice.
I mean, I like the comic book killing.
Okay.
Oh, well, no. That wasn't the best one, though. It was definitely the first one, the beginning, the motorcycle one. Because it looked painful when everything was, when he was morphing into it.
Yeah, the motorcycle for me was definitely the best just because of the pain that they were portraying and all that. And then the comic book was cool. Greta's would have been fine if they would have showed the rest of the scene like we talked about, but like as is, it's like blink and you miss it, and it's just kind of dumb, otherwise.
Yeah, it just looks gross, and that's it. So
we already mentioned, or I mentioned, my favorite one is Bon Appetit, bitch. From God. This, as far as the one-liners. But is there any that stood out for you in this one?
I don't think so, because I didn't mark anything down.
Okay. Best scream is Yvonne. And I didn't mention this in the trivia. She had extremely bad food poisoning, that scene where she's on the diving board. So with her being like broke out and sweaty looking and really pale, and like she was on the verge of throwing up at every second she was filming that. That's how bad.
But she had diarrhea?
No, she had food poisoning.
Food poisoning.
She was throwing up and
Oh,
so,
God.
Like, she said that it was like ridiculous, like trying to film that scene. And I would imagine, because she looked like needed to be like at home in the bed or something. So
damn.
Best boobs, we don't have a lot of options in this. It's Alice during the shower and asylum scene, because that transition and you don't really even see it. It's more side boob than it is full on, but it is what it is.
It's the only boobs you get, so.
Yeah, you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit if you like the tit. So
shut up.
Deal with it. Best side character, I'm gonna give this to Dennis Johnson, and this is a wholesome best side character because he was a shit drunken father in the last one, and in this one he is supportive. He's the only father in the entire, I mean, that was one of the trivia at one point and I cut it out. Well, he's the only parent in the entire Elm Street series that's actually supportive of his kid, and good on this guy. Like, I would play a clapping sound for him right now if we had access to something like that to play. But I mean, good on you, sir. You saw that your daughter was in a bad way. You lost your son, but instead of turning like Nancy's father did and turning to the bottle, you actually went the opposite way. You dropped the bottle and you actually became the parent you were supposed to be.
Yeah, and he was even
and he even stood by her whenever she was he even stood by her when she was going to be a single parent. Like, she had Dan's parents there telling her that she should, give the kid over to them, that she was too shitty of a person to be able to raise her own child, which is ridiculous. And said she was too crazy because of her whole Freddie thing. And her father stood beside her and was like, no, honey, you do what you need to do. So
yeah, at the graduation too, he was like, oh, I stood off to the side because I in case, I didn't want to embarrass you. And I was like, aw.
Yeah. So congratulations, Mr. Johnson. You are the best that the Elm Street parents, or I guess Springwood parents, can be.
Yeah.
How annoying is the Doom Prophet? But again, it's Alice in this movie, in this one it's Alice. But it's the final girl in this movie again. She's not really annoying. I mean, she's got a reason to be. Like, she's getting dragged in the dreams that her fucking baby's doing. It's not like it's her own fault.
Yeah, fucking baby. Yeah, she's not. It's weird because in the one prior, yes, she's still speaking truth, but it was just annoying. This time it wasn't. Yeah,
there's a way to deliver it. It's not, and like, it wasn't. I mean, And in this one, I mean, she did have Dan who believed her. I mean, like he was trying his best to get back to her whenever she said that Freddie was back. It's just that he happened to go to sleep for a split second, and there he was. He was, Freddie got him. So
Yeah.
Honorary Franklin Award I'm giving to Mr. and Mrs. Jordan, Dan's parents. Like, what pieces of shit? Like, they flat out, she's just lost Dan. I mean, they've lost their son. And instead of being like somewhat sympathetic to her, being like, now like a single parent, like, they turn around like, well, you're obviously too mentally unhinged. So give us our grandchild and we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
And I don't know about dumbest moment. I don't really feel like, I mean, there's not enough room for dumbest moment because there's only 3 deaths, but at the same time, like nobody in this movie really made any, they didn't do anything to bring Freddie back. Alice did her best to try to get rid of him before he fully manifested. Yvonne, even though she didn't believe Alice, wouldn't do anything out of the way to hinder Alice. So there wasn't anybody in this movie that I felt like was really that dumb.
Yeah, no, because they all kind of came to when they needed to. It kind of sucks that it took so long for Yvonne, but it is what it is, She didn't remain a naysayer, so I don't know. I think it worked out ultimately.
So, anything you want to add about this one? I mean, is this officially your favorite of these of this trilogy, or do you want to wait and then compare them at the end?
Let's go. We might as well just do the last one, and then we can say our piece there.